Welcome back. Well, the forced vaccine mandate is now causing another major airline to face worker shortages. Big smile. Don't worry about the slowdowns. I went through them last weekend. Every time you get stuck somewhere, like we got stuck in Dallas for 4 hours, just think about why you're delayed, why your flight was canceled. And before you start screaming or getting mad at one of those employees, remember why and say, you know what? I've been standing up for freedoms and liberties as a good conservative, and I want other folks to do it around the nation, and that's what's happening. That's what they're doing. Pilots, some of the mechanic and crew, the baggage handlers, everybody, they're doing sick outs, and that's what's causing this. If you remember, just 3 weeks ago, Southwest canceled more than 2,000 flights and had several days of cancellations and shortages because the workers aren't showing up. So the CEOs of these airline companies and other big corporations can be the lapdog of Joe Biden, say they're going to enforce it, then backtrack and say they're not going to enforce it, brag they got 70, 80, 90% of their employees already vaxxed. But guess what? There's a large enough portion who are saying no. And that's causing problems. And the more that do it, and the more problems caused, and the more money lost, because at the end of the day, it comes down to money. That's all, folks. Things will change. So keep the faith. Over the weekend, check out the headlines here. American Airlines canceled more than 1,800 flights, and they actually cited labor issues, and then, of course, the weather. It's always the weather, right? No. It's your labor crisis, folks. Change your policy. They'll come back to work. On Friday, the debacle began. Dallas-Fort Worth, that's where I got stuck last week. 343 flights canceled. Woo! Saturday, 548. And then on Sunday, over 1,000. Add them up. Yikes. As of about 9:10 this morning, we're told another 300 canceled on Monday and 180 delayed. That's pushing it well past 2,000. Very similar to Southwest, right? So see, it matters. If 10 or 20% of your workforce don't show up, you're screwed and you lose money. American Airlines COO David Seymour saying the cancellations were due to wind gusts out of Dallas. Okay. And only 2 runways were available to the airline. And so they couldn't operate at 100%. But Seymour also said that 1,800 employees returned to work today. So pretty much you said they didn't show up over the weekend, which caused the problems, pal. American says they are expected to hire about 600 more employees by the end of the year, to try and make up some of the shortfall. Because folks are quitting, and yes, they're firing folks over this. But at least they're feeling a little sting in their pocketbook. Now, the fight against forced vaccine mandates continued in many, many states around this country because, remember what Joe said, if you have a corporation, over 100, force them to get the vax or else. Well, it seems there's some good news about folks out there that are fighting for our medical freedom of choice. And some judges believe it too. A D.C. judge blocks Biden from firing unvaccinated employees and active duty military members. Woo! Just last week, D.C. District Court Judge Colleen Kohler-Cotelli ruled that the plaintiffs seeking religious and medical exemptions cannot, let me repeat, cannot, Joe Biden, be booted off their job. This comes as attorney Mike Yoder filed a lawsuit, Church versus Biden, challenging Biden's federal vaccine mandate as unconstitutional, which I firmly believe it is, but I'm not an attorney. Mike Yoder is a constitutional attorney, and he's the man behind that lawsuit, and he's here now to fill us in on the very latest. Mike, welcome back to the program. First and foremost, how you been?
Good. How have you been?
Well, concerned, okay? Concerned about so many things happening under this Biden regime, and one of them is weakening our military readiness. I have had tons of active duty and veteran military folks contact me and beg, and I'm going, I don't know what I can do except expose it, put it on this show, and hopefully a judge will do something about it to help you. But there are so many fighting men and women wearing that uniform that are fearing they are going to be kicked out and get an other than honorable or dishonorable because they won't take this vax. How big is this judge's decision and your case, and is it just temporary?
I think it's big in 2 different ways. One is I think it gives a lot of hope to people. I think people are actually going to be able to realize that once you do exercise your rights once you do go through the lawful channels and means to exercise them in a court of law, whether it may be pushing back internally or once you take it to the courts to get a legal ruling. That does inspire a lot of people to actually understand that this is not just a situation where everyone's going to be railroaded. Second of all, I think that the biggest impact overall is knowing that anyone who has actually submitted a religious exemption and has not yet received a response no longer has that time pressure, that wall closing in on you type environment where they're facing termination coming up, but they haven't gotten a response, where a lot of people have just succumbed due to the internal fear of the unknown and getting the vaccine in that sense, where if you want to get the vaccine, by all means, go ahead, but you should not be coerced, and you should never be put in a situation where you have to choose one fundamental right over another. Right now, they pit your fundamental right to exercise your religion, your fundamental right to earn a living or pursue a career of your choosing, and your fundamental right to remain free and have bodily integrity from forcible injections against your will. And you shouldn't have to choose. That's the entire basis of what a fundamental right is.
Yeah. So you're the constitutional attorney. Do you firmly believe that there is articles in the Constitution that backs up not only your case, but there's multiple cases from different private attorneys, from AGs. There's people suing over these vax mandates in multiple states. They're either suing their governors or they're suing Joe Biden, the administration. Do you think that in the end, when this all gets sorted out and probably, highest court in the land, are we going to find out that you and I, the folks that think we should have a medical choice on an experimental drug, that this is in fact unconstitutional?
Well, I think it really looks into what is not necessarily in the text of the Constitution, because the text of the Constitution gives you life, liberty, and property as the three enumerated rights. But what we've developed through our court system in a concept called stare decisis, which is just the Latin phrasing for precedent. But we've seen where you do have a fundamental right to privacy, which is what the left likes to rely on for asserting their abortion campaign. We're seeing that now in Texas with the abortion case there. But the biggest thing is that you do have a fundamental right in the First Amendment to freely exercise your religion. And when a fundamental right is substantially burdened by government action, that has to pass the strictest constitutional muster possible, which is strict scrutiny, which requires that you show it is the least restrictive means to achieving a compelling governmental interest. So you have to figure out first, what is that governmental interest? And then is there a least or a less restrictive means by which you can actually achieve that? And of course, even if the stem of the spread of COVID-19, which was already determined this year in the Cuomo Catholic Diocese case by the Supreme Court, obviously that's a compelling governmental interest. But is vaccinating everyone against their will and usurping their rights, carte blanche, disregarding medical conditions where someone could be facing effectively a lethal injection, or just abjectly ignoring people's religious rights and their freedoms to remain free from using a vaccine that was derived from aborted fetal tissue cell lines? I think that the answer is clearly that this is not the least restrictive means, and it will end up giving us a victory. Not only that, but it'll be able to preserve and establish some longevity within those rights for others as well.
Your lips to God's ears. Let's hope that we have more common sense and law-abiding judges who are going to use the Constitution and the law and institute it when you argue in front of them. I'll end on a positive note here. So besides what this judge did, helping your case in D.C., I'm sure you saw a Chicago judge also sided with cops and firefighters there. They have suspended the mandatory vaccination rule spewed down in Chicago by that tyrannical Lori Lightfoot of a mayor. And so kudos to that judge as well. So Mike, God bless you for what you're doing. Let's hope your case and others keep continuing to be heard in front of common sense, law-abiding judges, and that we keep getting these rulings so that Americans have the freedom of choice. Mike, if they want to get a hold of you, how do they do so?
You can find me on my website. It's yoderesq.com, or you can find me on Instagram at yoder_ESQ. Those are the two main ways that I can get in touch with people and start to communicate.
All right. Take care of yourself, Mike. Keep us updated.
Thank you.